The propaganda movement was the first Filipino nationalist movement led by Filipino elite and inspired by the proto-nationalist activisms of figures such as Jose Rizal and by his execution at the hands of the colonial authorities. Propagandists were largely young men, often mestizos and creoles, whose families could afford to send them to the study in Spanish University in Madrid and Barcelona. There, they encountered the tumult of 19th century political movements inspired by Enlightenment thought, individual rights, constitutionalism, and anti-clericalism. It was a simulationist movement in that the propagandists, many of whom were half Spanish parentage and saw themselves as inheritors of Spanish civilization, believed that the Philippines should be fully incorporated into Spain as a Spanish province and not merely as a colony, with Filipinos granted the same citizenship rights accorded to the Spanish citizens. Second, it sought the expulsion of the Spanish friars from the Philippines and the empowerment of a native Filipino clergy. Lastly, as a cultural movement, it showcased the writing and artistic production of the young Filipino elite as a means of demonstrating their intellectual sophistication on par with their Spanish peers. The propaganda movement targeted the Spanish government and public, but as an elite movement failed to engage with the wider Filipino population. The Spanish government was little interested in the conditions of the Philippines, particularly with the immense political foment in the Spanish political environment, and the movement ultimately received scant support and made little headway in Spain. The propagandists themselves were considered to be rebels at home in the Philippines, and many were exiled. Despite its overall failure, the movement generated a political consciousness that fed into the nationalist revolution of 1896 and the struggle for independence that followed.
After 5 years of Rizal academic conquests in Europe, he went back to the Philippines in 1887. His intention was to check on the growing illness of Doña Teodora C. Leonor Valenzuela's girlfriend, and to find out the impact of his noli me tangere. These objectives were all failed inasmuch the mother cataract was not yet mature for operation. Leonor was nowhere to be found, and Noli indeed has brought the impact but was not banned to get published in the country. So effective, the Noli was led to the collection of information and grievance of Calamba tenants regarding rents, church tributes, and taxes. It was due to the order of Governor General Emilio Trillo, served in 1885 to 1888. The controversy over the Noli and this written petition has further inflamed the anger of hearers to Rizal. Rizal's family was so happy of his coming home, but his happiness was rife with worries as regard his safety. His noli me tangere has caused for fierce resentment, and they have accused Rizal of slandering the Catholic Church and for spreading subversive ideas. Hence, Paciano never let Rizal off sight and keep himself close to the letter of security. Consequently, into the mind of Rizal, it was not only his life was jeopardized, but his life as well. Hence, with the advice of the Governor General and a vision that he could fairly write and work for the propaganda abroad, he left the Philippines for the second time on February 3, 1888.
Rizal's second journey to Europe. First, Rizal in London. After visiting the United States, Rizal lived in London from May 1888 to March 1889. He chose London to be his new home for three reasons. First, to improve his knowledge of the English language. Second, to study and annotate Morga's Sucesos de las Islas Filipinas. And last, London was a safe place for him to carry on his fight against Spanish tyranny. Trip across the Atlantic. While on board, Rizal entertained the American and European passengers with his marvelous skill of the yo-yo as a defensive weapon. Life in London. He stayed as a guest at the home of Dr. Antonio Regidor, a wealthy man and a practicing lawyer who was exiled in 1872. He was a boarder of the Becket family. Rizal had a romantic interlude with the eldest daughter of Becket family, which is Gertrude. He affectionately called her Getty, while she fondly called him Petty. Rizal came to know Dr. Renfold Rost. Dr. Rost was the librarian of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and an authority on Malayan language and customs. He was also impressed by Rizal's theming and character, and he gladly recommended Rizal to the authorities of the British museums. He called Rizal a pearlman. News from home, which is the bad news. Persecution of the Filipino patriots who signed the Anti-Friar Petition 1888. Furious attack on Rizal by Senators Salamanca and Vida in the Spanish Cortes, and Wenceslao Retana and Pablo Fesed in Spanish newspaper. A friend of Rizal, Uriano Viado, the medical student at UST, was arrested and jailed in Bilibid prison because of the copies of Noli that were found in his house. And last, Rizal's brother-in-law, Manuel T. Hidalgo, husband of Saturnina, was exiled by the Governor-General Whaley to Bohol without due process of law. And the news from home, which is the good news. One good news that cheered up Rizal is that Vicente Garcia's defense of the Noli against the attack of the friars. Rizal heard his news from Mariano Ponce. Annotating Morga's book, the greatest achievement of Rizal in London was annotating the Morga's book, Sucesos de las Islas Filipinas, which was published in Mexico 1609. Short visit to Paris and Spain. Early in September 1888, Rizal visited Paris for a week in order to search more historical materials, Bibliothèque Nationale. On December 11, 1888, went to Madrid and Barcelona, Spain. For the first time, Rizal met Marcelo H. del Pilar and Mariano Ponce, the two titans of propaganda movement.
Back to his native land, in Tondo, Manila, on July 3, 1892, at the residence of Doroteo Onghoko, Dr. Jose P. Rizal founded the La Liga Filipina. Andres Bonifacio were there, including the Patriots. 3 days after the Liga was founded, Rizal was arrested as he was accused to have the leaflets Pablo Frailes. They were reportedly found in his sister Lucia's pillowcase. The said leaflets were a satire against the rich, demoniacal friars who amassed fabulous riches contrary to their monastic vow of poverty. The friars had their eyes prying on Rizal, as his novels were likewise satires to the friars of their time. Rizal denied the accusation, but to no avail. He was then arrested and escorted to Fort Santiago, where he was detained. On the following day, June 7, 1892, the Gaceta de Manila circulated the arrest of Rizal. The caused turmoils among Filipinos, especially to members of La Liga. An order from Governor-General Bohol was given with wobbly evidence deportation of Rizal, one of the island in the south, Dapitan. Thus, past midnight of July, under the heavy guard, Rizal on board steamer Cebu sailed to Dapitan, where he spent 4 years of his life in exile. On the night of Rizal's arrest, a group of Filipino patriots secretly met at the residence of Diodato Arellano. The meeting was organized by Andres Bonifacio, where the former Valentin Diaz, Teodoro Plata, Jose Dizon, and Ladislao Diwa attended. It was reported that the meeting was the creation of the Kataas-Taasang Kagalang-galangang Katipunan ng Mga Anak ng Bayan, or KKK. Rizal was not aware and has no participation in carrying out the plans of its founding. The Katipunan served as an anti-Spanish society with the goal of gaining Philippine independence. Moreover, Emilio Jacinto wrote the Cartiliang Katipunan, where the duties and responsibilities of members were indicated. The Katipunan was a secret society that aimed to, number 1, fight for the independence of the Philippines from Spain, 2, teach Filipinos right conduct, cleanliness, and to fight against blind obedience to religion and to overcome weakness of character, and number 3, help oneself and to defend the poor and the oppressed. The organization secretly organized and recruited members for 4 years until August of 1896, the outbreak of Philippine Revolution.
In Dapitan, Rizal was placed under watch of Warrant Captain Casinero from July 1892 to July 1896. Rizal lived in a pretty simple life during his banishment in Dapitan. Rizal had built an informal school where he taught several children. Rizal and his lottery ticket number 9736 was luckily picked. The amount was shared to his parents and the rest were used to invest buying agricultural lands where he established school and clinic along the coast of Talisay. In practicing medicine, he successfully operated the eyes of his mother. It was the people who went looking for Rizal during that time to have their eyes checked. He is also fond of doing agricultural pursuits. Rizal even fell in love and formed his intimate relationship with Josephine Bracken. Rizal's life in Dapitan was simple yet worthwhile. Revolution was planned in Manila in 1896 by the Katipuneros. In order to solicit Rizal's favor and ask for his permission, they sent Dr. Pio Valenzuela to Dapitan. Valenzuela brought a blind man named Raimundo Mata to camouflage his true intention. Rizal said he has always opposed, fought, and made clear that armed revolution was impossible, absurd, and disastrous. He explained that reforms must also come from above because reforms that came from below are upheavals, both violent and transitory.
Blumentritt suggested to Rizal to volunteer his services to the Spanish government and join the forces as physician in Cuba. Learning that revolution broke out and